Howdy, all. Happy Wednesday. We have game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final tonight in Vegas. We will talk about that in a little bit. Eck will be with us in a bit. He's in transit. We're, as usual, start with some non-hockey pre-show stuff. And Russ, I have to say that, I love Twitter, and Twitter, it's very interesting. It's very, it gets the news out, but sometimes it gets overwhelmed with the trivial. And we're going to talk about one of these stories specifically, but I wake up this morning and my phone is blown up with all these little, mentions of different things. And the 3 most prominent subjects on Twitter this morning were was the cancellation of Roseanne, which I could give a crap less about because I never watched that show. I didn't watch it when it came back. I think she's a disgusting troll, and what she said was abhorrent. But the problem I have is that, okay, she deserved to get fired, but now people out there on the other side of the spectrum are saying Bill Maher and Stephen Colbert and people like that should be fired for the stuff they say about Trump. And I don't think, that's the thing. There's a moral.
Well, it has nothing to do with the other, but whatever.
Right. It's a moral equivalency, and all it is mud throwing back and forth.
That's all it is.
Right. So there's that. There is apparently guys, I'm 51 years old. I'm not into hip hop, so I don't know who is what.
Be, Mike. I mean, that's
oh yeah, I'm real cool. Yeah. Apparently Drake and some other guy are telling each other off, and that got a whole bunch of buzz. And I don't know either. I basically know Drake because he's from Toronto and he's really involved in the Toronto sports scene, but I don't know who.
That's who it is.
What's that?
The other guy is Pusha T.
Yeah, whoever the hell he is. Where did he 10 bar, as my father would say. And the third one I think is the most interesting, but it's very, we don't have the entire story, and maybe that's just cover and BS, but Brian Colangelo, who was the former president of the Toronto Raptors, president and GM of the Toronto Raptors, son of Jerry Colangelo, who's well known for many, many years in the NBA. He is right. He is right through the Arizona Diamondbacks. He is the GM of the Philadelphia 76ers. And the story is that he established, I think, 5 burner or ghost Twitter accounts.
Yeah, allegedly 5. He's admitted to 2.
Right. So he admitted to the one that's like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That one.
Yeah.
No. So. Yeah. But what is the scandalous thing about this is that apparently he has badmouthed some of the players on the 76ers. He's badmouthed Masai Ujiri, who's the Raptors GM. And they go, it's basically stuff that he wouldn't want associated with himself. So he went on and made a surreptitious Twitter account, according to the story from, I think it's The Ringer, which is Bill Simmons' thing. And we don't know whether this is true or not, but it's just the world of social media and how it sort of bleeds into everything.
Well, I'll say this. First off, the 76ers said they're going to have an investigation, and the worry that I have with that investigation, and I use the word lightly, is they didn't know about 2 of the accounts that he had anyhow. They didn't know about what Colangelo was up to. I don't think Josh Harris had any idea, which is not his fault, but I don't think he knew. So if they didn't know about that, how good are they going to get overnight at sort of doing what Ringer did and checking on IP addresses and checking on Twitter cachings and checking on old tweets and checking on all kinds of stuff, the coding, the linguistics, they're not going to be able to do that overnight.
And Twitter is not going to help them because this is a First Amendment issue. They're not going to say, oh, sure, 76ers, we'll help you with the IP addresses on that. No, they can't.
No, so they're going to have to, find a way. And if they even were going to do this, it would probably take a month. And we don't know how long the Ringer, account, the Ringer article took. My guess is it took weeks. But it all happened with a tip. And here's my little tip for everybody on the internet. If you think you're anonymous, you're not. You have an IP address. There's always a way to track you. So if you're going to do something more outrageous than you would do in everyday life, don't do it. Twitter's not the place for it. You'll eventually be found out. And if you are found out, that stuff lives forever. People have these screenshots, screen captures. It lives on forever. And that's going to be the problem for Colangelo here. He could deny things all he wants.
Right.
But just the fact that he admitted to having a couple of the accounts now brings into question. And the other part that I really enjoyed was they did have like a linguistics / data guy that looked up things that Colangelo would say in press conferences. And some of it was changed into like street lingo, but other stuff rang true as to what this guy would say. So it was really weird.
And what I'm waiting for is once the investigation happens and if it's found that, it is from his IP address, all of a sudden you're going to hear his computer got stolen or he got hacked.
Yeah.
Because that's always the defense. I got hacked.
You can't say the Twitter account got hacked this time because he admitted to a couple of the accounts.
Oh no, but not the other three. You could say, right. Oh, they were hacked, and it's like Anthony Weiner. No, that's not a picture of my what. I was hacked, and that's somebody else's what.
At the end of the day, let's say it's not him. Let's say he's telling the truth, but let's say it's a family member. It still falls on him. And if this information got out there from a family member and that's what they're going to look for. They're going to look for a leak. It's hard to find leaks. We know that from the White House. So it is.
I know.
Right? I mean, literally, you could have what's called a secret meeting in any company, and it could literally be on Twitter 10 minutes after you've concluded it with some account that looks like an egg or a made-up face or whatever, and there's not a lot you could do about that.
Well, I think that of course, from something serious and something sort of scandalous comes something humorous, and what now is being talked about on Twitter is what your burner Twitter handle would be.
Yeah.
And our mutual friend Anthony Mangione said my burner handle would be my initials, MA 1967, and then Anchor Bar, which everybody and I said, no, you left out five letters. So it's actually MA 1967 Anchor Bar sucks. That is my burner Twitter handle. What would yours be?
Twitter? Yeah, mine would be Hawaiian Pizza, all one word, and then Lover, LOVR, because I eventually would run out of characters. And that would be my burner handle.
You don't love Hawaiian pizza.
Obviously, that's why nobody would think it was me, Mike.
I missed the sarcasm.
That's the whole thing about the burner. It's got to be something completely off the beaten path.
Yeah. Now, as you said before, this took the heat away from the big story that was going on. And it's funny because our mutual friend Ted Starkey took a picture of him with the Stanley Cup yesterday in Vegas. And it was just ironic that we were talking about what was going on with the Vince Lombardi Trophy in Philadelphia.
Yeah, if you were, and I only found this out from listening to the radio, but if you were a season ticket holder, you got the chance to make an appointment to go and see the Lombardi Trophy for 30 seconds. You got to take a picture of it with your own phone and on your basically, your own everything. They gave you a little backdrop. And I saw a friend of mine took his picture and it looked great. But my thought was, like, this is $1 billion organization. Couldn't the Eagles have given people a little longer? I mean, you could go 5-6 different places a year and see the Stanley Cup. I understand that the Lombardi Trophy, like when the Colts won the Super Bowl, they held their celebration in a supermarket like a Publix, and I understand that's a great way to do it. But this is like, this was a way to really sort of give something back. And who knows if you had to pay for parking when you went down there, right? But to me, it's just like, okay, yeah, take a shot and leave. We're giving this to you. It's an extra little bonus. But like me, if I owned the team, I would have been like, hey, let's make a really nice background here of like the field, maybe even superimpose the players, whatever. And you could be a part of that. Like, maybe you're at the 50-yard line or whatever with the trophy, or a picture of the celebration superimposed. All you have to do is drop your person's picture in that and email it. How long would that take? 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And just to me, that's what they should have done. But, that's just me.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can go up and see the Stanley Cup in Toronto anytime I want because the Hockey Hall of Fame is right there. And honestly, they can stick the Vince Lombardi trophy.
They can. Here's an interesting thing. We'll do this on the pre-show because we're waiting for Eck to come on. First thing, breaking news. Geo3183 said, I need to have Mike take me to the bar bill for the wings that I'm owed. I've never heard of the bar bill. Have you, Mike?
Nope, never heard of it.
So we don't know where that place is, Geo, so I'm not going there. The other one is Kyle is asking, with the 14th and 19th overall picks and Wayne Simmons, what should the Flyers do? With all these different things. Look,
I think they're going to re-sign Wayne Simmons unless Wayne Simmons is bound and determined to go to unrestricted free agency. Which
re-sign Wayne Simmons. I mean, he had an injury-plagued year, and he plays his heart out. There's no reason not to take this guy and give him.
They will use the money that is cleared by Latera's contract and by Filppula's contract to re-sign him. I would say he probably gets in the 6 to 6.25 range, something like that.
6 to 6.25 for 5 years. I can see that. And then as far as the pick, sure, they will definitely try and trade up. But to be honest, where they are, considering they're close to a playoff team and they have reinforcements coming in the next 2 years, and Carter Hart being one of them, I would just stay where they are. Stay at 14 and 19. With 14, see what falls to me.
Right.
See what player all of a sudden is there that you didn't think was there. Take that player, and then with 19, take something else you might need.
Well, I'll plead ignorance on this, but I know that they traded a lot of second, third, mid-round picks. I don't know if it was last year. I know that last year they took Matthew Stroman, I think the 4th round, but I know they traded like a second to move up as part of the deal to get Morgan Frost, I believe. Maybe, and I've heard this. I heard this from Elliot Friedman on the 31 Thoughts podcast this morning, that a lot of teams are looking to they see value deeper in this draft in the 2nd and 3rd round, and there might be teams that not trade out of the 1st round, but would not be totally opposed to trading down to get extra picks.
I don't see it. I don't know where Elliott's seeing it. I don't know who he's getting it from. I don't think it's a bad draft, but I don't think there's this amazing value when you get past the 2nd round. I don't. Or even deep into the 2nd round.
Well, I think he was I think he was more referring to, like, say, we know that the Sabres are going to take Dahlin. Number 2 is Carolina. Number 3 is Montreal. Number 4 is Ottawa. And we've talked about three players who, if you ask one person, they'll say it's Zadina, Svechnikov, Tkachuk, and then the other person will say Tkachuk, Svechnikov, Zadina. It's like it depends on who you're talking to when it comes to where these guys slot in. And there might be teams that might be willing to trade down from, say, 2, 3, 4, or even into the top 10.
I think everybody's trying to trade up. I don't think there's going to be teams willing to trade down.
Okay.
Me personally, if I were a GM, it would be my quest to get in the top 10, because I think that's where the real payoff is. And then if nothing else, get in the top 15, because that's still a good payoff. And then after that, look, you'll still find your players. But I'm just talking about, if you want to find a franchise player, you're looking in that top 10. And that's why I don't think anybody trades down.
Well, I mean, and Eck will be here in a second now. He just texted me. Yeah. The one thing, and I keep coming back to this, and maybe I'm completely off base, but Carolina and Montreal, if you look at their depth charts on in the organizationally,
my place was in East Aurora. I don't know if that means anything to you.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of it, and I've never gone to it, so sorry, I can't give you a thumbs up or thumbs down on that. But Carolina and Montreal. I mean, Montreal's got Paling in terms of a future center, but they're not deep at the NHL level. They're not deep at the AHL level in terms of up the middle. And the same thing goes with Carolina, other than Aho, and maybe Lindholm. Jordan Stahl is more of a defensive guy, but they're not going to get a center in this draft. They're not. Yeah, there's not a Svechnikov, Zadina, Tkachuk. They're all wingers. Most of that top 10 is either defense or wing. So
Yeah, Konami is the guy that I think right now in my mind is the best center, and you could definitely get him in the top 10. So I don't think you're going to spend your second round pick on him. So I tend to agree with you. This is one of those drafts where, look, you could take Tkachuk, and knowing that he's probably a winger and maybe he could play center, fine. But you're not really getting a natural center in those first, 5 or 6 picks for sure. And so that's the problem. Then with Kotkaniemi, is he really a top liner? Probably not. But that's the best case scenario. So again, yeah, that guy doesn't exist really in this draft.
And
most likely.
Well, hold on a second. The echo.
I don't hear it.
Hold on. Let me just lower my volume. Maybe that's it. Okay, that's better. The one thing though is you can't rule out the possibility of. I mean, it's been widely known that Montreal is considered might be the team most open to trading that number 3 pick because of where they are. Claude Julien and Marc Bergevin. I mean, we know that they're going to be busy in terms of maybe trading Max Pacioretty. Shaking up that roster because it's just not going in the direction. And, right now, I think Bergevin's got a year, maybe 2, before the axe falls on his neck. And he's got to make, maybe that means trading Galchenyuk. Maybe it means shaking up the roster. Maybe it means trading the number 3 pick because, honestly, by the time that player comes to the NHL, Bergevin may be out of a job. So they might be open to something like that. And Carolina, everybody
desperation can make you open to it. There's no question.
Right. And Carolina, and we'll start the show here because, there are some rumors, and this is the thing. We're going to start hearing more and more of this as we get closer.
This year, there's going to be a lot of rumors.
Yeah, and it's gonna be for people and saying if they make sense or don't make sense, and whether the team should do this or team shouldn't do this. The name of Noah Hanifin has been out there, and I think it's been out there since he was drafted basically, but more recently in the last year simply because Carolina under Ron Francis extended Jacob Slavin, extended Brett Pesce. So they have 2 guys making one over $5 million, the other one just under $5 million on long-term extensions. They have Justin Falk, who had a bad year last year, but is still a good defenseman at 26 years old, making about $5 million for another 2 years. Noah Hanifin's a former 5th overall pick, and his entry-level deal is up. So he played in the league as an 18-year-old. So at 21, he's an RFA, and more than likely he's going to expect to get it paid in the range of those 3 other players. And that would be spending over $20 million on just your top 4 defensemen. I've said that, with their need of reinforcements up the middle or just offense, that trading Hanifin would be realistic. And the name of Hanifin has popped up. I know Elliot Friedman reported a connection between Hanifin and Vancouver. There's long been a connection between Hanifin and Toronto because Mike Babcock wanted to draft him over Mitch Marner. Right. But the one thing with this Vancouver rumor, it supposedly involves.
And by the way, it's a good thing Mike Babcock's not in charge of the draft because I would take Marner over Hanifin every day of the week.
Right. And but the thing is that you can't. I mean, Mitch Marner is a great player. He had a great playoff. I think he's going to be a very, very good, sort of sidekick to Austin Matthews for the next decade. There's no reason to regret that pick.
I mean, that's like saying, Yari Curry was a sidekick of Wayne Gretzky. Like, he's going to be a really good player, a top 20, 25 player in the league.
Yeah.
He has that
but the problem is that after that pick, you have 3 defensemen who I think are difference makers, who are potential number 1, number 2 defensemen on teams in Hanifin, in Provorov, and in Werenski. And, that the Leafs needed Marner, but they also need one of those guys. So that's where they are.
They were going in at the time, right? I can't fault them, for that. There's one other side note here too. I saw, and we'll talk more about Hanifin. Obviously he's going to come up. We talked about him for a couple times already in rumors, and so this isn't shocking. I saw an Edmonton writer write that there's a rumor that Edmonton's possibly, shopping their 10th overall.
Yes.
But if they don't shop it, would they consider taking Vitaly Kravtsov? Probably not, because of what happened with Yakupov. Well, here's the thing. Kravtsov, I have not even seen a lot of this guy. He played in the KHL, first the MHL, then the KHL.
Right.
He played 4 games in the World Juniors. He did play up in age. I've got some notes on him. Could I honestly say, and could a lot of teams honestly say they've got enough on this guy where you would make him a top 10 pick? No way. And it's not because he's Russian. It's just because he hasn't shown enough. Like even for your 2018 season, now granted, he's 18 years old in the KHL, you're talking about 7 points in 35 games.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about. And that's good. That's good. But again, it's not a real barometer. And then even in the World Juniors, like I said, he had no points in 4 games. Again, hard to gauge what this guy's going to be. So I can't believe he's going to be anything but near the bottom of the first round or somewhere in the second. No way I spend a pick that high on him.
Hey,
sorry.
We were just talking about, and I know that you wrote about this a couple days ago about Noah Hanifin, and there are rumors about Vancouver, and as you said, and as has been out there for a long time, I think that there are aspirations from the Maple Leafs to get a guy like Hanifin, because he's 21, he's a big defenseman, he's sort of like what they don't have in terms of a building block. I mean, they have Morgan Riley, and Morgan Riley is, I believe, 23 or 24 now. He was 2012 draft, so he'd be 24. Or 2013 draft. No, 2012. 2013 was Gauthier. Yeah, no, 2012. So he's young, and he's definitely a top pairing guy, but they really need another defenseman. I don't think Jake Gardner is ever going to be a top pairing guy. Yeah. And Hanifin would be somebody I would think that they would, or a player like him would be somebody that they would target, but it all depends on what Carolina is looking for. And the name of Vancouver has come up here. And I mean, I don't know if I see a fit, unless we're talking like a Ulevi and something, and like the number 7 pick, something like that.
They have a lot of prospects in Vancouver.
They do.
I mean, what we don't know, and what I think will come out in time, because some people are telling me that they're hearing this, so this is really more. Man, my image is bad today, huh?
It's a little cloudy.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll try to fix it up.
Like a cheesecloth filter or something.
Yeah, or just the smudged lens. Let's see what's going on.
There, it just automatically got better.
Actually, that's weird, because I put my thing over the camera, and it is not that my camera lens is up here, so I'm not obviously not being picked up by my phone, but by the wrong thing. I'll come out and back in a second, but I'll explain the Hanifin thing for a sec. So what we don't know, and what I've heard mentioned more often lately, is that he may really want out of there.
Yeah.
And this is more speculation, so I don't ever like to say this. So this is purely speculation at this point. But there are people who are saying, now if that is the case, if we were to follow that along the lines, and again, we don't know that it is, or that he's been public about it, or
we've heard this rumor before. This is not the first time.
It might be private, behind the scenes type stuff, right?
Right. And as soon as I heard that, the first example that came up was the Dougie Hamilton stuff in Boston, where it, the fact that he would not re-sign there, or just didn't wanted to get out of Boston, it mitigated the value that they were able to get in a trade. Now, to me, that's like blood in the water, and all these other teams are sharks, because if you need a top 4 defenseman, who's a guy who's big, who can be offensive, who I think has the capability of being a two-way defenseman.
Exactly.
You're gonna go after this guy. So I mean, I think I don't think it's limited to Toronto and Vancouver. I think there'll probably be about 7 or 8 teams at least in on Hanifin if they legitimately are thinking about trading him.
I will tell you this: in this draft, as good as the defense is in this draft, I'm not trading a top 5 pick for him.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it, because all it's going to do is just get me in cap trouble down the road, and I could get a guy that could conceivably play in the NHL in a couple of years and give me those years for a lot less money, on the ELC. I mean, I don't see a team in the top 5
that is, one or two players away. If it was sort of like if it was
Carolina, I mean, if they had a goalie, they could be that team.
Well, what I was going to say is
that is true, and I think that people underestimate Carolina.
If it was a team like Tampa who finished, had a bad year and picked Drew at third overall when they were still like a great team, it would be a situation where like if you're I would give up the third pick to get a defenseman who can help me right now, but
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like that's like the missing piece.
I mean, I think that, you're still talking Hanifin, right? Because I went away.
Yes, we're talking Hanifin.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my thing's so blurry today.
Don't worry about
it. So I think the it's kind of how I feel. It's pretty ironic. It's like I feel hazy and blurry today as well. So this is my computer expressing my actual emotions.
But it's not a purple haze, so go ahead.
No, my computers are expressing my actual emotions, which is it's kind of interesting. All right, so the thing that about this is that Hanifin, I don't think we've seen 70% of what he is yet. Like I honestly think that this is a defenseman who has so much skill and is incredibly talented, was so highly touted, but at the same time,
yeah, but I think his offense was overrated. I don't think
I never been overrated. You're right, but I think that
offense-wise, not defense.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what really accounts for a really good number 1 or 2 defenseman in this league. Like he's one of those. I mean, he's going to be one of those. And if he's not there yet, I don't think there's any question. That he's
I don't think he can be a 1.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, but a 2, that's like the only thing harder to get in the 2 is a 1, right? It's not easy to get. So I think that, so I think Hanifin's value is extremely high, and I think that people underestimate what you're gonna have to give up for him as this goes along. I really do.
Well, he had 32 points last year, 10 goals.
Yeah, and
and I mean, I don't have the time on ice, but I don't think he had the most time on ice on that team. It was probably.
He averaged 18.52, so there's
again. I think
it was probably Slavin and Pesci.
70%, like of what he's going to be eventually.
Okay, but here's the argument, Ek. If let's say I'm picking 5th, whoever that is, and I have a chance to get Hanifin, I'll take Quinn Hughes with that pick because I think Quinn Hughes is going to be better than Hanifin. I'm almost certain he is better than Hanifin.
If you're
you're talking about like the best defenseman in the draft, right? So you're talking obviously the second.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, even if you're talking about one of the top
3 in the draft.
The top 5 defensemen in this draft you would all project to be number 1s, right? So
no,
not all 1s, but like 2s and 1s and 2s and 3s.
But if you're a team that's in development or rebuilding, I agree with Russ. You're not going to take Hanifin at 21, who's expired his ELC, and you're going to have to pay $5 million a year. It makes no sense. You're just spending money for years where you're not going to be a playoff team. But if you're a team like a Vancouver, I think. See, that's the thing. I think Vancouver.
There's the rumor, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's the thing. I think Vancouver.
$5 million. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's $5 million. You're going to get a 1 or 2, right? So it's like that is not. So I don't think. Why not get a 1 or 2 that's younger? Then even if you're a rebuilding team, like why not bring in somebody who you can grow with?
Right. If you're Vancouver, it makes more sense to keep the pick and keep the number 7 overall pick and draft a defenseman and have that player develop, because right now you're building your team around Besser, around Horvat, around Ulevi, around Thatcher Demko, the young guys who are 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, and you're a ways away. If you're Toronto and hold
on to the Toronto thought for a sec, because back to Vancouver, if they're at 7, right? They're at 7.
Yeah.
So Darlene will be taken at 1. So then for the other 6 picks, I've got a choice of Boquist and Hughes and Bouchard.
Yeah.
Chances are I'm going to get one of those guys.
Right.
You can project all of them to be better than Hanifin, with maybe the exception of Boquist, but he's still a better power play guy than Hanifin will be. And so that's the tricky part of this.
And on top of that, you have Ulevi, who's never played a game for you. So I mean, so you're talking about 2 defensemen, that guy and Ulevi. So
I'm going to throw some monkey wrench in this, though. I mean, what we're seeing now in Las Vegas is and I've talked to people about this, is changing the perception of what it means to rebuild and how long it takes. Because I mean, you can sit there and say, okay, yeah, we can't, it's going to take 3 to 5 years. Can it? I mean, can any fan base is any fan base going to be okay with that right now? Like, I mean, I know that's what it's always happened.
Toronto was.
Yeah, they were, but would they be now?
But
I mean, look, a team comes in right now that's just an expansion team and wins the Stanley Cup. Say
there is a benefit to starting with an absolute clean slate, and that's the thing.
Right.
None of these general managers who are taking over teams are not getting a clean slate. What they're getting is they're inheriting the other GMs, their previous GM's mistakes. So they have to deal with that. I mean, that's why I'm sure the Seattle GM job is going to be a plum job, because they're not going to have to deal with any mistakes. They'll have a clean. Now it won't be as easy as Vegas, but
let's say, just for argument's sake, there was a new team coming into the NBA this coming season, right? And LeBron James is a free agent, or he has an out in his contract and could be a free agent. He can call up a buddy, hey, Chris Paul or whoever, you name the guy. Sure. Let's go over to this new team, and we could attract 2 or 3 guys, spend a lot of money. They could win it all, and they could do it a lot easier than it's been for the Vegas Golden Knights. A lot.
Right. And in the NBA, also teams that have a lot of young players like Philadelphia or Boston, they have tons of cap space too, and that's their advantage, and they can attract free agents that way. I mean, the free agent system in basketball is different than the one in hockey, and unfortunately, teams that have massive cap space like Arizona, if they wanted to, they could go after John Carlson and Tavares, but they don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to do it. So, but I'm just saying, like, it makes more sense for Hanifin to be an acquisition of a team that's on the cusp than a team that's rebuilding. And then that's why I said Vancouver, I'm not so sure. A team like Toronto, and there are other teams beside Toronto, but a team like Toronto, it makes all the sense in the world. Now you'd have to give up assets to get him, but they have assets, so I think that's where it makes more sense.
Well, there's 3 teams
for Hanifin.
Well, here's the thing: like someone like Thomas brought up in the chat room. Hey, Tampa could use this kind of guy, but Tampa has Sergachev, who eventually could be a number 1. So and if he's not a 1, he's a 2. So they're not going to be that kind of team. So go ahead, Eric.
No, I mean, everyone can use him, right? I mean, this is, I mean, no one's going to turn away a guy like this. Oh, my camera suddenly changed itself. Sorry about that. I guess that's why.
Well, I mean, and the problem with Tampa is Tampa will be okay after next year when 4 defensemen are UFAs and they clear about $16 or $17 million off their cap, but that means that Strawman and McDonough are UFAs, and they're probably going to extend one or maybe even both of them. So
I mean, I've heard 3 teams, okay, and with Hanifin. I mean, I've heard a lot of teams, but I've heard 3 teams that speculatively I'm willing to say on the rumor chart, these are the 3 teams that are on the rumor chart, which is Vancouver, Toronto, and Boston. Now, Boston, it is, and I've tried my hardest to not put Boston on there, because I think, okay, like we talked about before, Hanifin grew up in Boston, played for Boston College, or in college, Boston College, or Boston University. Is Boston?
I'll check.
Yeah, I forget.
Boston College.
Boston College, right? All right, then now and the Bruins. I mean, it's a big pressure. I mean, obviously, there's big pressure for him to play there. So the thought process is should he be playing there? But so I went to somebody and I said, is Boston really just in these rumors because of the fact that he went there and all this stuff, which is typical, And I was told no. I said he definitely is on Boston's radar. He definitely is somebody the Bruins are interested in.
The Bruins, what are they giving up to get him? Like, it's just
unless you're giving up a Brandon Carlo.
That's what you're gonna have to give up.
Right. That's a lateral move. I mean, not to say that I don't think
it's a lateral move. Or you're giving up, a serious draft pick. Like that's the other thing. Like, now this is.
Yeah, but they want more than just a draft pick for Hanifin.
Yeah, they want more than a draft pick. But you're talking. I mean, or a series of draft picks. Like, this could be.
Sure. Okay.
What I've heard in Carolina is that they do want to start over. Okay, now even though I don't think any of us believe they should start over, like I think they have something of the I mean, this is a team that something of actual talent there that could create some problems for teams because they're very fast and they've got some of the right elements, but they do want to clean slate this thing. So that's when you start saying Hanifin for several picks, and a couple.
Well, even if you gave them several picks and Forsback, a Carlson, and like Matt Grzelcyk, it would whittle away at what little depth I think Boston has left for when the aging core is just too old.
Right. I agree, and that's why I keep thinking that Boston's not the option here. But so those three teams are the three teams that I've heard the most of. I do agree in some ways that the Maple Leafs probably have the most.
Okay, so let's explain the Vancouver.
Whoa. Let him say that.
Get why Vancouver's
on
him in the sense that they're picking 7th.
Yeah.
I laid that part out. Unless they feel like they're going to make the playoffs this year or next, which are they really in that position? Not yet.
No. Unless their clueless ownership continues this fallacy that they're a contender, which they're not. Do the rebuild, do it the right way. In 2 or 3 years, you'll be a really good team. But if you keep teasing your fan base with stupid free agent signings,
even if you start Demko as a rookie goalie, there's no guarantee that that's going to work out.
Right.
I mean, they could be a playoff team. I mean, they're not out of the question to be a playoff team.
No,
they're on the bubble, I think, in that, because I think
that's the same mentality that led them to sign Louis Eriksson.
No, I know, but this time it's actually really true. I mean, now they have some young talent, they have some young scorers, they have some,
but not on defense and not enough of it.
The other thing you have to remember, we don't know what's going to happen with the Sedin money, and that's going to be something that's going to be significant. They can't just let the Sedins go and not do something significant with that.
Right.
I mean, they're going
to try to get in on Tavares. That's what they're going to try to do.
You're in Tavares stuff, but that you could see John Carlson going there.
All right, let's assume Juolevi plays either at some point this year for them.
Mm-hmm.
You have Juolevi, Edler. You have, let's say they even get Hanifin, Del Zotto. They had Derek Pouliot. Tanev is clearly a guy for them that's still really good. Ben Hutton. It's not enough.
No, it's not. It doesn't appear to be enough. But it doesn't.
It's not enough. It doesn't. It's not the appearance. It's not.
It's not enough.
Is that defense better than the Vegas Golden Knights defense?
Maybe on paper, but not the sum of the parts. No.
Right. I mean, I've heard the same things that you've heard, Ak. I mean, that the Vegas defense is sort of like the part due to the Pittsburgh Penguins winning without Letang. Like, you can get away with a defense that doesn't have a number one. Well, okay, I think you can get away with. Remember, like the Sabres a few years ago, they didn't have a number one line; they had 3 number 2 lines.
Right.
Well, if you have 3 number 2 defensemen, you can get away with not having a number one. Sure. Right. And can you make a case that Nate Schmidt, Shea Theodore, and I don't know who would be the third guy? Miller, say they're number 2s.
Miller's their next defenseman.
Yeah, Miller's
say those guys are number 2s. You have 2 number 3s, and then you have a 5 and a 6. If you have that kind of defense, yeah, you can get away with it. But more than likely
7 anyhow. Like these days, you need 7. You can't even survive with 6 anymore.
Right. But more than likely, I mean, the thing is it's getting to the point now where paying a number 1 defenseman is like paying a number 1 center. And when you're paying a number 1 defenseman 9 or 10, I mean, then it's sort of tough to fit everything else.
I mean, who are they going to get in free agency? They're going to overpay Mike Green? I mean, is that what they're going to do? Like, that would be stupid.
That would be stupid. I agree. But that could happen. They could get in on I don't know. All I know is that Vancouver, I've been told, is going to use all of that money from the Sedins, and they're going to use it in a way that's going to make them competitive right away. That's what they're telling people within.
All right, so you know what this is the equivalent of? My dad and my grandmother used to say, like, when they gave us money at holiday time, it's already burning a hole in your pocket, right?
No, Russ, you know what this is?
We've covered the Rangers long enough.
This is going to be the hockey version of the Miami Marlins when they spent all that money with the new building, and then what happened? They fell flat on their face. They fired the manager, and they traded off half the guys. Don't do it.
All you have to do is look up a book called The Worst Team Money Can Buy when the Mets did that one year and see how it worked out.
Is that the Bobby Bonilla?
No, that was with
Vince Coleman and
Vince Coleman and Brett Saberhagen and Eddie Murray and
Oh yeah, Bobby Bonilla.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I'm sorry, my camera's.
Well, okay.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think that.
Well, what were you saying about
Let's
Toronto?
go to Maple Leafs, and then another bigger point.
Okay.
So the Maple Leafs have the most to give here. I think there's no question that if the Maple Leafs are willing to give up Kapanen, this deal gets done, because there's a huge, aspect to the value of Kapanen there in that city. More so than the only place he's probably more valuable than Toronto at this point, I think, would be in Carolina, because Sammy Kapanen is a legend in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And he, that would be that's a huge.
He's a legend in South Jersey too, but Carolina, yeah.
More of a legend in Carolina.
The only thing I'm skeptical of about that, and I agree, but the thing is that maybe he was a legend with the ownership with Karmanos and with Francis there. Dundon seems to be taking a scorched earth approach to.
Yeah, he does, but he also I've been told, pays attention to message boards and things like this, and is really keeping an eye on.
Great, an owner is into HF boards.
Right. He's keeping an eye on this kind of stuff because he wants to do right by the fans, right? So I think an easy thing for him to do right by the fans with is to get Kapanen now. And I'm a big Kapanen fan too. Like, I actually am. I think I put Kapanen above Nylander as far as things go.
No, I don't like that.
Most people don't. But we will sit here in 10 years and debate who had a better career.
That's fine. Mark this in time.
Okay, and Kyle Dubas is also a big fan of Kasperi Kapanen. He was the GM of the Marlies. He knows the quality of Kapanen, and I think the Leafs recognize that. And
you have to get rid of one of them to make this happen.
Well, okay, I think
or else you become the Edmonton Oilers. That's the bottom.
By the way, in 10 years, doing this show on computers will be stupid. It'll be some other way. But anyhow.
If you in virtual reality or something like that.
There's another one of these kind of bets we had that a couple years ago somebody reminded me of that I was absolutely right on and you guys were wrong on. And I can't remember what it is.
Well, if you can't remember, then it's not really.
I will remember, though. I will remember.
Okay.
My friend who watches the show will remind me, because he's the one who said it before. But there was something. You were so right on that, and they were so wrong. Yep.
Get back to us on that. No, but I think it would take a package for the Leafs to get Hanifin. I think Kapanen would be included. I think probably their number one would be included. And what I wrote about yesterday is the Leafs have a situation in their organization at a position where the Carolina Hurricanes are dramatically weak, and that's goaltending. And Garrett Sparks, who is their number one goaltender with the Toronto Marlies, who's 24 years old, who won the AHL version of the Vezina and the Jennings this year, and he's got them one round away from winning the Calder Cup. I don't think that he's going to be the backup in Toronto, because Mike Babcock likes Curtis McElhinney, who's a veteran guy, and they could lose him in waivers if they doesn't make the team, or they'd have to keep three goaltenders. So I think he's going to be used as an asset during the summer, and a trade with a team like Carolina makes all the sense in the world.
Okay, but here's the thing. I think if you're talking, if what X is saying is true about how Carolina views their team, then Vancouver's got more to offer, because they can give him the 7th overall pick, and they can give him someone like Jake Virtanen, who really doesn't exist in the Carolina world, where he's a big guy who could skate, who has toughness, and they don't really have that. And the thing is, then they would have the 2nd pick and the 7th pick, and then everybody would be talking about the Carolina Hurricanes for a month before the draft, where right now nobody's talking about the Carolina Hurricanes.
They're talking about them being a train wreck, and that's
but that's okay, but that's not.
But this is the thing, and I'm not writing off Jake Virtanen as a prospect, but pretty much right now the book on Jake Virtanen is he has been a bust.
No way, he had a good year this year.
He
had 10 goals.
He's not living up to the expectations that they thought.
Only because he was drafted 6th overall. Doesn't mean he can't play in the league.
I'm not saying he can't play in the league. I'm just saying that compared to where he was drafted and the expectations, he has been a bust.
I will tell you.
At 21, I can't go.
I'm not writing him off. It's like writing off Cam Neely when he was in Vancouver.
Yeah. Another thing you have to remember in Carolina is the Rick Dudley thing, because Rick Dudley comes from the Dale Talent School, right? Which is that they do like the players that they've had success with somewhere. You always, that's one of the things that they tend to bring them along with them. Like you've seen, and Dudley did this, in Florida. He did this in Chicago. Talon
There's
did this.
nobody from Montreal he could bring along with him other than Galchenyuk.
Well, no, Pacioretty, and that's why. And I haven't heard Pacioretty's name being mentioned. I honestly have to say that I really do believe firmly that Pacioretty is going to be in Florida by the time we hit the regular season. But I
think that's a decent bet. Just one thing on Dudley, and then we'll move on from the Toronto related stuff. Is the fact that Dudley basically has set up shop at Ricoh Coliseum over the last few years. He's there all the time. He lives, I believe, he lives in Buffalo. That's the area that he patrols and scouts. If they're interested in Kapanen, if they're interested in Sparks, the reason is because of Rick Dudley. He knows those players like the back of his hand. So
because I think that he does like a lot of Leafs players, and I think that's and a lot of Leafs prospects. So I could very easily see that happening, where he brings in the guys like that. Now the bigger question of this all is, does the success of the Vegas Golden Knights change the way people are going to view rebuilds? Now we can. There's two different questions here. Does it? And then there's a question of should it? Okay, because they're two different things. Like basically, the NHL is a copycat league. So in general, you would sit there and say yes, it will affect it. But should it affect it? And to that I ask, is the way that teams rebuild now, which is classically through the draft and through prospects and stuff like that, and over time making it happen, is that the best way to do things?
Well, for a normal team, yes.
Right. Because you were signing off when we made the point, and then you came back. The point is, Vegas had the advantage of having a complete clean slate. If a general manager takes over a team, right now it's a situation where he's inheriting the guy who was the GM. He's inheriting his mistakes, so he doesn't start with a clean slate. He starts with.
All of those guys that Vegas got, all the players that Vegas has could have been gotten by a trade.
Okay, but there's no other team in the league that had a situation like this that you could have just simply out of free agency made into a Stanley Cup contender. There really isn't.
Right.
No, there's not. But I'm saying the Vegas model to me is not so much the breaking things down. Okay. The Vegas model is, are we going to draft people, or are we going to find people that aren't underappreciated on their teams right now and bring them in? That's what Vegas has done.
Looking for that, and I think they did strike some gold there, but they still drafted, and they're going to keep drafting because the other part of this is going to run out.
The Vegas thing is going to be difficult, but I really want to know, is that a possibility that we see a lot of trades for players like Alex Chason, like we brought up? Like players like that are out there right now.
That always exists, though.
Yeah. It doesn't. It hasn't, because and it should. It always should have existed. But I've had Jason rumors.
Let's the free agents.
Let's say this. If there wasn't an expansion draft last year and Dale Talon was shopping around Marchessault and saying you have to take Riley Smith to get Marchessault, nobody, not even Arizona would have taken that, because Arizona doesn't have the financial wherewithal to pay a $5 million player to take on a guy who was going to be an RFA at the end of the year. So that was a deal where that was a situation where Vegas was in the right place at the right time with the right financial situation.
But also, I think you're seeing it more and with the college free agents and the KHL guys. That's why when I reported that Arizona was talking to some guys just to see, that's why you saw that there's been some signings in the last couple of weeks. That's where they're hoping. But when you go look at the percentage of those guys actually having an impact, it's very low.
I actually think the bigger impact is going to be what happened with Will Butcher and Alex Kerfoot in August of last year, two of the college free agents who came out and both had great seasons, and they were undrafted or drafted players who escaped to unrestricted college free agency.
But what are there? 2 good guys a year, 3 really good guys a year.
Right, but you're gonna create a market for these guys. That I mean, there's teams are wide after VC and after these guys. Everybody's gonna be on the prowl.
And VC gave the Rangers 16 goals.
See, that's the thing. People are saying that VC, like, people are wondering, is that college thing like a one-hit wonder type
No,
thing?
I mean, a 16-goal scorer is a 16. He doesn't get assists. He never was going to be an assist guy. But at the end of the day, when you get 16, 17 goals out of a free agent, you get 17 this year, 16 last year, that's a success. But that's not making you a Stanley Cup contender either.
Now, I heard this morning, and apparently it's been out there for a little while regarding Max Domi and interest from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ryan Wilson, our Pittsburgh blogger, wrote about it
over the weekend too.
And
actually, wait, can you hold that for 1 sec, Mike?
Yeah,
I did want to just say this because it popped in my head. So as an example, if we're going to put a cost to these guys, VC's ELC is the same ELC that Lias Anderson's going to have, and in 2 years, Lias Anderson's money, the little bit that you're paying him will be worth way more than what the Rangers paid for VC's 16 and 17 goals. That's why you don't really win in that equation most of the time. Sorry.
Right.
Well, right. They're older players, and they get off their ELC quicker. And the only thing with Anderson is he's got since he's a first round pick and a top 10 pick, he's got the bonuses. So if he reaches certain marks, he's going to get paid more than VC because VC.
Sure, but you'll gladly do it because he'll probably have 40 more points.
No, this Max Domi rumors out there that apparently that the Penguins have a lot of interest in him, and I'm just putting two and two together. It's like I have no source on this. I'm just saying there have been rumors about Phil Kessel. There have been rumors about Max Domi. There have been rumors about Domi going to Pittsburgh. There have been rumors about Phil Kessel going to Arizona. Let's see.
Yeah, but.
I'm not saying that's all, but I'm saying
what I heard was the Phil Kessel rumors were really, really overblown.
No, wow, okay. That's not what I've heard.
No, I know that's not what everybody's saying, but people in the media. They love to rip on Phil Kessel. I talk to people. I talk to somebody very high.
It's not the media act. Mike Sullivan ripped Phil Kessel.
Mike Sullivan's I know he ripped Phil Kessel, but he's the coach and he's allowed to do that. But at the same time, I don't see the Penguins moving Phil Kessel. He was one of their most effective players all year long. He has continually been one of their most effective players. He had a bad second round of the playoffs, but beyond that, that's like, to me, it's a lot of people had a bad second round of the playoffs.
Well, this is the thought, and I buy into it because it's the same thought that Toronto had when they traded him 3 years ago. At age 31, which he turns, I think, sometime this summer. He's got 4 years left in his contract at $6.8 million. The money paid out is going down. The cap hit is not. Pittsburgh has a bunch of players like Jake Gensel and Brian Rust that they need to sign. They need to clear cap space. And when a guy like Kessel, whose physical fitness has never been the biggest prominent thing in his career, at a later age, that's going to be have more of a detrimental effect on him. And I think it's simply, we got our 3 years, we got our 2 Stanley Cups. Let's cut bait while we can and get something for him. I think it makes sense.
I don't know. I tend to think they're going to hold on to him, but let's just look at this from the Domi portion of things. So
Malkin loves him, by the way. Last thing on Phil Kessel, Malkin loves Phil Kessel. He does not want Phil Kessel going anywhere. I talked to him about that.
And that'll mean something. It will. Because Malkin will say, I'll go easy on you on my next deal if you keep Phil Kessel, if he likes him that much. Anyhow,
they're the most beautiful people in hockey. They get along really well.
Yeah.
And I think it's totally perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, if there's a bromance there, maybe don't break it up. But
go ahead.
The thing with Max Domi is he's a 45 to 55 point guy. That's what he's going to be. Yeah, I don't think he was ever going to be more than that, and I think that's fine. And he doesn't have the 18 goals because he really hasn't found anybody on Arizona any sort of chemistry since Duclair. But it doesn't mean he won't. He's only 23. But all this does for me is send up an alarm signal that he's 23 and he's an RFA. If he really gets traded and they don't trade for like a core piece, then basically every time the Arizona Coyotes draft in the top 15. When that guy is past his entry-level deal and that bridge deal, they're getting rid of him because that's their pattern.
Yeah.
They I mean,
well, how is their pattern changed over the last 5 or 6 years?
It hasn't yet, but at some point you have to, don't you?
You would think, but that organization, no. You trade Antoine Vermette when you get a chance. You trade Martin Hanzal when you get a chance. I'm still skeptical about Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I think they're going to trade Nicholas Yarmulson. It's a revolving door with that organization until they have stable ownership or until they move someplace else. The finances have less of a consideration. That's going to be the reality in Arizona.
This is the team that's closest to being able to do what Vegas did if they want to, right? This is a team that has the ability to actually almost clean slate it with a couple stars. They have a chance to now. The thing about them that they stuck with Tocchet as long as they did was stunning.
That was a good move, actually.
It turned out to be an okay move because the players did end up playing for him. Yep. Tocchet's relationship with Domi, I'm told, is very, very good. And I think so. If Tocchet's still there, I don't think Domi goes anywhere. But I will say this much though. I have not heard Pittsburgh, and I know this is not the first time the Penguins have been, how to put this, involved in a rumor right after they're eliminated. That sounds interesting. Like this, and it's been a couple of years, but there's something that happens in Pittsburgh that I learned long ago, that the Penguins will always look, their names will always come up in trades, in big trades after they get knocked out of the playoffs. And for whatever reason, it used to happen this way a lot. And it's as if they want to tell their fans we're still involved, we're still looking to do something. Things leak out. I think here I did hear one thing about Domi last week that I do put a lot of stock in, and that is the Winnipeg Jets had interest in him. And when I talked to people about it, it made all the sense in the world. They were really expressing the fact that they didn't have the depth to play, with Vegas, and the fact that they needed to get younger in their minds, and they're a young team, but they needed to get younger in their depth. Their depth needed to be, they needed their depth to be younger with more speed, and the fact that I didn't realize that Domi is from Winnipeg.
He was born there, but
yeah, I mean, born
grew
there.
Up in Toronto.
Grew up in Toronto, right? But still has Winnipeg connections with family and things like that. From what I understand, I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but that's what someone told me.
I just see Cheverdayoff trading for a guy that he has to sign to a contract. He's not that guy. That's the problem with this deal.
Yeah,
right. I mean, more than likely, Max Domi, wherever he plays, is going to be signing a bridge deal. It's not going to be signing a 5 or 6 year deal.
But even that, Cheverdayoff almost doesn't even like signing any kind of deal unless it's a long-term deal.
Right. And they have so many young forwards in the pipeline. I don't know. I mean,
but we say this, but they have this, like you're saying, Russ, they have to sign these guys, and I can't say everything I know about this deal, but what if one of those guys they know they can't sign?
Sure, if they go RFA for RFA, then it makes sense.
That's what we're talking about in this trade.
Right. I can see that.
This would be like, that kind of a move.
I was just going to say that makes sense. Getting back to Arizona, I'm looking at Tucson. There's really no defensemen that are really that good. Maybe Capobianco, that's going to make the earth shake when they graduate to the NHL. So even if they retain Ekman-Larsson, guys like Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Hoffenmeyer and Cameron Crotty, all these guys are 3 years away, 4 years away, 5 years away. Like their defense, there's no way to get – and that's why I think they legitimately tried to make it better when they got Yarmulson and everything, and it still didn't really work out. Their defense is still too bad, and it's not good enough to be able to rebuild quickly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's the problem.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
like if they were to get Hanifin, that would be a team that makes sense only because they have a ton of assets and they really do need help on the blue line and maybe insurance if Ekman-Larsson leaves.
I've heard they're in on Oscar Klefbom. That's where I've heard Arizona's in.
Okay, and that would make sense.
That's tied to the Oliver Ekman-Larsson to Edmonton.
No, Ekman-Larsson's not going anywhere. No,
then it's
definitely not the case.
Why hasn't he signed a deal yet, then?
He hasn't signed a deal.
We can't until July 1.
I know, but why haven't we even heard about?
I think we will. I think we will hear about it, and I think that will happen. And I also do believe that there's part of Ekman-Larsson that is going to wait a little bit, perhaps like Tavares or Stamkos did. But at the end of the day, they're not going to trade him. They're definitely not going to.
He's going to ride it out like he's going to ride right into free agency. Then
he may ride all the way to free agency, or he may just wait and see what they do this year. Like to see where that goes. But at the end of the day, And he can leave, but he's going to get offered a hell of a contract by them.
Okay, but wait. All right, so let's examine that. He's going to be 27 when he's a free agent. It's his one contract that he can get 8 years from Arizona or 7 years from somebody else.
Right.
What exactly do you think Arizona is going to pay him when they don't pay anybody? I'm just curious.
He's going to make over $10 million a year.
No, they will not pay him that.
They will. They have to. They have no choice. He is the only guy they have to pay, and for a little while, still the only guy they have to pay and anywhere near that kind of money. So as it looked, they know how important he is. They know he likes it there. He wants to stay there.
General managers will lose their friggin'.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
the highest paid guy there is a guy they didn't even sign with Derek Stepan, and there's money savings and all that.
Right. So they have a team like that has so much cap space and so much going on that they got to sit back and they're gonna do it. They're gonna offer him such a contract. It's going to be like he's
the highest paid player they've ever had at 5.5. There's no way.
But at a certain point, and hey, maybe there are players out there that it's not that big of a deal to win. But you know what? At a certain point, after you've made one conference final in the 7 years that you've played in Arizona, or whatever, how many years it is, at a certain point, you have to think, well, either I'm going to have to go someplace else to win, or I'm just going to, be here, and every April I can golf. I mean, come on.
Let's think about this for a minute. If we're talking about a future plan for this club, right? They have two guys locked up for 2019, 2020, Goligoski and Demers. That's it. Those are the only defensemen that are locked up.
Right. And they inherited one of them because they got Demers from Florida, and they signed Goligoski. I mean,
there's not a great track record here. I'm sorry.
The Arizona Coyotes have been a turnstile. The only player that they haven't been is Shane Doan, and I think if you ask Shane Doan right now, he probably regrets the last couple of years in Arizona when he had a chance to go someplace else and win.
Here's the thing too. They only have 3 forwards. This is really startling if you think about it. They only have 3 forwards that are locked into a contract for 2019-20. Now there's others that are RFAs, of course. They have 4 RFAs. One of them's Clayton Keller. Another one's Christian Fischer. So, of course, they're entry-level guys. And Derek Stepan. That's it.
Yeah, that is it.
So, for 2019-20, just think about this for a minute, Ek.
I know. That's why I'm saying they're the closest to being able to tear it down. Like,
But they actually the players.
Right. There's a
roster full of players. Sorry.
In my estimation, there is a greater likelihood of them making a deal where they trade Ekman Larsson for 3 or 4 pieces because they simply need bodies.
They still don't have enough.
They need bodies, and they've never shown a compunction to pay a player what he's worth.
In 2021, they literally have 4 players locked up on their team. 4 players.
Now, in that instance, they're going to be like the Vegas Golden Knights. They almost have a clean slate. But unlike Bill Foley, Bill Foley, their ownership is not willing to spend the money.
Well, the biggest thing is, and there's not an expansion draft for them.
Right.
I mean, they can't just go out and take players from other teams. They've got to make the deals. They've got it. So in order, they have to give something to get these guys.
I was talking to Russ about this a couple of days ago. The one deal where I think Chaika operated like an expansion GM, which I think was probably his best move, was when he took on Pavel Datsyuk's contract from Detroit to get to the cap floor, and he got a 1st-round pick, and I think he got Chychrun for that trade. So deals like that make sense for Arizona when they can get something for the cap space that they're not going to use.
Well, here's the difference too.
Yeah.
The difference also is in 2019-20, believe it or not, Vegas has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players locked up, which is what I think double that Arizona has.
Yeah, more than double.
So they have more bodies. In 2020, 2021, they still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locked in contracts. And what did I say? There were 3 for Arizona?
4.
Arizona can't even become the Vegas Golden Knights. They can't.
And that's why I think a deal involving Kessel makes a lot of sense for Arizona, because he's locked up for 4 years. The cap hit helps him get to the cap floor, and the money being paid out is less.
No, that's true. That part is true.
It's all true, but they're not going to move. They're not going to move Kessel.
Okay.
And I think that I will
2 cookies. Bet.
I'll bet you a ton of cookies. I mean, that's just I think that's
a ton of cookies.
That feels like
I'm diabetic. I don't want a ton of cookies.
Right, Mike.
I'm diabetic. I don't want a ton of cookies. No, thanks.
No, I'm telling you. No, to me, they've made. I mean, and the funny thing, you talk about that Datsuk trade, and they also did it with Pronger, right? And they did it
and Dave Bolland.
And Babe Bolin. And those things are great from our perspective when we're sitting here and saying, oh, they've got the cap space to do it. But imagine if you're a player on that team and that happens. Okay. So when that happens in the player on your team, you see that, they're okay. Yeah, sure. They're not paying. They're not actually paying that money to anybody because it's all insurance. So it's not like, someone's getting paid.
Right.
But the fact that you have that much cap space and you're on that team, it's a little, it pisses you off a little bit.
It's defeating. It's
very defeating. And it's very much like, yeah, it's great that we have $20 million in cap space that they can give away.
But the problem is nothing has changed. I mean, if there had been a change in ownership or whatever, I would say, okay, well, maybe they will put more money into the franchise, more money into salaries. Maybe there's an impetus. But right now, it's replacing older guys with younger guys on entry level deals who have good to great ability. And then once they get to a certain point, 2-3 years down the line, are they going to trade Clayton Keller? Are they going to trade Dylan Strome? I mean, it's just a cycle.
Yeah, I know. And I really would have, and what's amazing when you,
by the way, a ton of cookies, if there was sugar cookies, would cost you $24,000.
Okay. All right, I can do that. I will give you a ton of cookies if they trade Phil Kessel.
He would want the cash equivalent, I think.
I'm not going to give you the cash equivalent. I'm going to make you take the cookies.
No, because you'll be baking for like 6 months to give me a friggin' ton of cookies.
But when you look back on it, I mean, it's just like, I think you have to start really looking at, one, what a hell of a job Dave Tippett used to do with this team, and it's
amazing.
I mean, because they've never spent money, and they've always been an island misfit toys, and Dave Tippett would put them into the playoffs. They were like
Gerard Gallant light, because he had a system that worked for the most part. It just, if he had a few more bodies, he could have gotten more results.
Yeah, and and I know that Tavares loves Doug Waite, but I think that, to me, that Tippett is the guy that should be coaching the Islanders right now.
He would be better because they have some defensemen that could use a little direction, and their defense could be better for the personnel they have.
I saw a report, and then we had to talk about game 2 before we end the show. I saw a report today, and I don't know how accurate it was, that basically Doug Waite and Garth Snow did not know that Lou Lamoriello was coming in. They were completely blindsided by the hiring of
I know something about that. I know some stuff about that. It's not. I know why that person's saying that. And I can probably tell you something about fair. I know why that they're saying that, but I don't think that's 100% true.
Okay.
It's at least on Garth Snow's perspective. But I do think that I know why they're saying that. And I think I do think that Garth Snow is not going to lose a job or anything like that.
No, he's not. I basically said that a month ago.
Yeah, we all said that, but that he, and I think Garth is actually happy about this because it helps him out a lot.
Again, if we go to the corporate world, like if I go back to my days in the corporate world, like in the hotel business as an example, there would be people inserted literally overnight like Lou was, and nobody would know. Like that's just the way it is.
Yeah, this is the opposite in that instance where everybody knows, but and you want everybody to know. That's the other thing. Like the Islanders want everybody to know that Lou's there, because that brings a whole set of players that are questioning what the hell the Islanders are doing, to the Islanders side, and says, okay, well we
still don't know what
they're doing though. If you got Lou there, they're doing something. Like and
Lou's but we don't know.
But Lou's not going to sit by and let a team lose. Like that's not what he does, and he never will do that.
Except his last few years in the Devils, they lost. I mean, it's not like he can control everything. He's not a magic. He's not
a magic worker. And the last few years with the Devils, but a lot of them losing the last few years of the Devils was because they had success, and he lost players because of salaries who had success.
I know. I'm just painting a picture where, look, Lou is very good and very effective, but there are some times where jobs where, like, Bill Parcells came in for the Jets and he never made it to the Super Bowl. He got close.
Yeah.
There's not a guarantee that Lou makes it to the Stanley Cup with this team. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome, and he may not be able to overcome them all.
And I'm not convinced that just the presence of Lou moves the needle on Tavares. I think he's still going to listen to other teams. I think he's, he may go back to the Islanders, but I think the 5-day window is going to still be in effect, and maybe he gets wooed away by.
And Lou will tell him to take that 5-day window. That's the way Lou does things. He'll go to him and he'll say to him,
he was going to take it anyhow.
Right.
Lou's going to say, you really should look around because you owe it to yourself. And he's going to. This is the way Lou works, and it really players love it and they buy into it. And at the end of the day, it does move the needle. It really does.
And based on the status of that franchise, if he goes back, I think he's insane, but that's personal opinion.
I don't know.
They're going to have to offer him $10.5 million a year to keep him.
Right.
Well, we might have BD Gallup tomorrow, right? So we can talk about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to get out of here though, because let's talk. I have like 2 minutes before we go, but we don't to touch base on this game for tonight. But because we talked about it a lot already. But I do want to know like the opinion of how important this game is to Washington. I mean, that sounds like a stupid.
It
sounds like a stupid, obvious question, but there's something about this series that is very telling to me, and that is the fact that the Capitals have not been good at home.
Yeah.
And as we play through this, and you can sit there and say it's the Stanley Cup Finals and all that, but the only team who's home ice advantage
winning streak at home.
Yeah, that's true. But the team whose home ice advantage was working the best for them has been Vegas. I mean, they're 7-1 at home, right? So that and the Caps have won games at home, of course, like you said, but they haven't. Their record is still 500 at home.
This is the simplest way to say it. I don't think if the Capitals lose, there's no way that they can come back and win the series. I think they'll need to hold serve, and that's been tough for them. But I mean, obviously they'd be much happier and in a much better position if they win in Vegas. So I mean, in that sense, I think it's not a swing game. Game 3 is the swing game if it's 1-1 or 2-0. So I think that's the more important of the two games.
I'm going to go with my usual tact for these kinds of things and say the previous numbers are meaningless. There's going to be so many people that say, well, the team that wins the first game wins 85% of the time. It doesn't matter because there's always those other teams that didn't do that and won. And so you never know which year you're in when that's going to happen. So even teams, when they're up 2-0, there'll be stats. Well, when teams are 2-0, they've won 83.5% of the time. Then there's been a lot of teams that have won being down 2-0. I think the game's really important, and they definitely want to split, but I don't think they're dead if they're down 2-0.
Yeah, well, that's my wife's pet peeve is those statistics. But I think this the one thing I will say about this that I really think is there is something happening here, and I'm going to write about this tomorrow, especially if it comes to fruition. Went back to the last two series, the San Jose series and the Winnipeg series, and both after game ones of that series, the same thing was said that's being said in this series by the teams that were playing the Vegas Knights, and that is we played it was sloppy. I mean, I know and Winnipeg won, but even that they said it was really sloppy. We didn't have it. We have to tighten up. We great. We score goals, but we scored lots of goals, just like Washington's saying. But we got to tighten up. And I think that is like the Venus flytrap trap of the Vegas Knights. Like, okay, we're going to tighten up, and then the second you tighten up with Vegas, you're screwed because that's in order to beat Vegas, you have to attack them.
I agree with you, but I'm still of the belief that if they did screw up the Ryan Reeves call, Vegas wouldn't even have won that game. And that's why I don't think the Caps will change too much. Like I told you, I would put Chase on in, but even I was on Sirius this morning, and even Mike Johnson was like, yes, that call should have been made. And yes.
Oh yeah, everyone's saying I'm
right. And so when it's a power play and you're up 1 and you could be up 2 in the third period, it would have been massive. Even
there's no question. But even if they win that game, okay, like the Winnipeg won game 1.
Right.
So even if they win that game, and because what I wrote in my preview of this series was that Washington, had to win game 1 to win the series.
Right.
But I said if if they do win game one, it doesn't mean they're going to win the series. And that was my feeling of the first
No,
game.
it just would have guaranteed a split for them. Now they're not guaranteed that.
Yeah, like
Well,
I felt because I feel like what happens is there's a pattern that's developing when people play against Vegas, and why Vegas is taking teams out so quickly and easily is because teams are in they're in psychology. There's a saying that an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal. That's like I was a psych major, and so an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal. This is
not ready to buy into that, Eck, because that was not an easy game for Vegas. They take away the empty net goal. It really wasn't an
easy game, and they could have lost. And game one they lost against Winnipeg.
And so I think things have caught up to them more than what's happened in the other rounds because they kept playing a better team. Now I think they've played a team that's pretty evenly matched with them, and that's why I can't go with this other everybody underestimated them thing.
No,
it's the way it's this old school mentality of how you have to play in the playoffs to be successful, and everybody they play the first game because there's no thinking ahead of time. They fall into those the way and they play Vegas probably the way they should play Vegas because it's a natural thing to do, and then they fall back.
But two factors here. Fleury probably played his worst or second worst game of the entire postseason in game one, and they still won. And two, Tom Wilson, if he breathes the wrong way, he's going to get called.
Yeah.
Both are probably. He played worse against San Jose, and in that one game where the Sharks destroyed them.
Right. That's why I said it's worst or second.
Yeah. And I do think one of the big advantages of the Capitals here is they know Fleury and they know how to get Fleury and you move Fleury side to side. He will overcommit in certain situations.
And the first 5 minutes of that game, he was out of position 2 or 3 times, and they definitely could have gotten a goal, and they just didn't. Here's the other thing, though. Marchessault's playing. Is he really healthy? That's the question you got to ask yourself.
Yes. What I go off that is, okay, when he came back on the ice, he looked really good after the hit. Now
adrenaline's going. Like you don't know what happens the next day.
So we will see. And tonight you could still have adrenaline, and we might not know until game 4 or 5 whether Marchessault's healthy. Like it could still keep going tonight. But we have to go, and that's it. I got to pick up my daughter from school. She's probably sitting out looking at her garage right now. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. Enjoy the game.